Welcome to Conversations at the Effie. I'm your host, Aaron Shufletoski. We're here at the Effie Arts Collective, situated on the unceded territory, Kamloops, where we meet interesting people in Kamloops. Today, I am here with Jess Santos, the mother of Haus of Misfit. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Aaron.
Thank you, Jess. So I'm just going to get right into it. What makes Kamloops so weird?
The weirdos. all of the weirdos that are like hiding. I think we're maybe mostly introverts, so we don't tend to go out very much. But wow, what does make Kamloops weird? I don't know, the people who live here and kind of stand out. It's fun to walk down the street and kind of see like someone that you're like, hey, that person looks cool. Like, you don't see that too often in a very conservative town. So it's kind of like almost, it's counterculture, I guess, in a way.
When I first moved to Kamloops, I found it very strange that Kamloops people were very friendly. Yeah, they are. I felt that more about Toronto. When I moved to Toronto, I was expecting almost like New York. And people were nicer there than in Vancouver. I find here you still got that small town vibe, a little bit. Not so much these days, but before it was more small town vibe. What brought you to Kamloops?
Ooh, that is a long story. I'll try to shorten it down for you. I was living in Toronto, and then Southern Ontario specifically. I kind of moved around a little bit, and then my parents live here, and my sister and her family were in 100 Mile. I got a job at the cannabis shop, and then so that brought me back to BC, but I grew up on the North Coast.
So let's get into it. What is the Misfit Night Market?
Oh, Misfit Night Market is home to all the artists, companies that kind of march to the beat of their own drum. A lot of it is heavily rooted in punk culture as well. That's more of just kind of like a personal touch to it because I grew up listening to punk music. But, you know, it kind of started off as a place for the weirdos to get together and like make magic happen. But I didn't really realize how magical it would really be. So.
Lots of, so it's different vendors selling different stuff.
Typically more along the lines of like weird, witchy, alternative, punk rock, and kind of just everything in between. I definitely prefer vendors who might not necessarily fit in or do well at a traditional craft show. And I always kind of like to just support other people that are doing kind of their own thing, because that's just kind of always been the way I was.
How important is counterculture to the Misfit market?
So the Misfit market, I feel like it's a little bit more kind of, yeah, we want to be different. We take pride in being different. You know, we want the people who maybe feel like they've been the misfits to be celebrated. And I feel like that kind of also too opens up people who maybe aren't like that to embrace a little bit of the things that make them a weirdo too. Sorry, can I swear?
No, but we can edit it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can bleep.
You know, it allows people who come that maybe don't necessarily fit that like subculture or lifestyle to maybe let their inner weirdo be free a little bit.
With the new series Wednesday, with Marvel Comics being so big, the MCU in film culture, nerd culture is really becoming mainstream.
Oh yeah.
Are weirdos the norm now?
Honestly, I think we've always been the norm, but the norm was not that. Like, it's more common to be atypical than it is to be typical. We're all weirdos. Like, we're human. Like, don't tell me that, you know, Mr. Preppy guy over there doesn't do, you know, have something weird about him that maybe contradicts that sort of identity that you might have. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Is there still a danger to being different? In the past, it seemed like there was very, you know, being different was putting a target out. but now that it's becoming more mainstream, is it safer?
I think that's a great question, and it's a tough question to answer. I think we are as safe as the spaces we make for ourselves, but that doesn't always guarantee safety. Like, you know, we as queer people have always kind of had to create our own spaces that we were safe in. Sometimes that was through other, you know, subcultures. Like, I found that in punk rock as well, very early on in my youth. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily make us safer, because now that we're being more accepted, you get people who are pushing back on that because that contradicts what they view as normal or acceptable. You know, you see that a lot with, yeah, I don't want to get too political here, but I am pretty political. But you see that with SOGI education and certain candidates that were running here for school trustee that, you know, were calling queer people groomers. So it's still very important that we have a safe space, and especially for the young people that live in Kamloops, which are huge supporters of the night market, to have that space where they can express themselves freely and not worry about, you know, being assaulted or anything like that, or even just harassed. And especially with like neurodivergent people as well. It's really important to have those spaces, and even if it does piss off some people, it just makes it even more important.
What makes a space safe?
I feel like I might not be the most qualified to answer that, because it's something I always work, like it's something that you're constantly striving for. I think what makes a space safe is the commitment to, you know, of the major players in that group to have a zero tolerance policy for homophobia, ableism, xenophobia, any of that stuff. Yeah, it's just important to make sure that those types of ideas aren't welcome, and it's really a community effort, I think, to keep those spaces safe and to keep people who might be bad actors out of it. Thankfully, everything that I have found is that at the night market, it's all about community. It's always good vibes, and if anybody wanted to come and try to change that, I think there would be enough solidarity amongst the community that, you know, we watch out for each other and make sure people are safe. My rule of thumb, or sorry, my kind of mantra is that, especially in terms of being a safe space for a misfit night market, if you're going to be disrespectful or homophobic or transphobic, I'm going to identify as a problem. So that is kind of where I'm at. It's always easier for me to stand up for other people than it is to stand up for myself. So now that I've kind of have this like little community that's been built around Misfit Night Market, I do feel like a mother. I do feel very protective of this community.
How easy was it for you to find a community moving to Kamloops?
It wasn't super difficult for me because I did live here about, I'm going to age myself, 10, 15 years ago for college, when it was the University College of the Caribou. And I had kind of, at that time when I lived here, I was pretty involved in the punk scene of Kamloops, like Little Big House. Even people that I've met now through the market, I've actually kind of, you know, I'd see them in passing, even though we weren't really friends, like I knew who they were. So coming back and literally going to see the same band that I used to go see, Sound City Hooligans, shout out for them. You know, it was kind of like I never left in a way. And then when I started planning the market, I wasn't sure if there would be that same kind of artisan community, but I was delightfully surprised because it turned out to be really easy with the very first night market that I ended up having to cancel because of the pandemic, but yeah.
What is your future goals for the night market?
My fantasy, my French vanilla fantasy, is that I would be able to open up a retail location, a permanent brick and mortar, that would also be able to utilize some sort of outdoor space, and maybe other businesses kind of in the area, to continue with Misfit Night Market, because I don't want to stop doing that either. I don't want to stop making space for this community, but I want to have a shop. That's always been kind of like a little dream of mine, so.
I'm going to change streams a bit here. What makes a great hat?
Oh, now we're talking about the chapeaus. What makes a great hat? I think that can be a very subjective question. So if we're thinking more in terms of artistry and quality, a good quality hat is typically made with fur felt rather than wool felt. It's a softer pile and it stretches easier. It's also just kind of more luxurious. Good trims, a good fit. There's a lot of people that don't wear hats right because they don't fit them. But it's also very hard to find a hat that fits sometimes. I have a huge head. Most of the hats I make don't even fit me.
Do you judge a person on the way they wear the hat?
No. No. Except there was one kid that I used to see that wore a MAGA hat. It was a MAGA bucket hat, and I couldn't tell if he was wearing it ironically or not. So I didn't like that hat very much. I was always like, where did you get that?
What's your primary passion when it comes to creating?
My primary passion is sewing. I learned how to sew in high school. It was kind of like that one hobby that I had that I actually stuck with and was good at, because everything else I would be interested in, I'd do it for a little bit and then I'd either be not good enough to my standards, so I'd quit, or I would just get bored of it. But sewing has always kind of kept me going, and then eventually I went to fashion design school, which, don't do it. It's not worth the student loans. No, it was a great experience.
Do you sew most of your own clothing?
No. I actually hate sewing clothing. I mean, I don't mind it. I sewed a dress recently just because I was like, no, I haven't made myself anything to wear in a while. I did make a fashion collection in college for like graduating. But for the most part, I just tend to buy band t-shirts and cut them up and thrift store things. I make tote bags, zipper bags, hats. So I have made a hat for myself, but I typically don't make for myself. The making is what I do for myself. It's not so much something that I do to give to myself, if that makes sense.
What is different about Kamloops now than when the Little Big House existed?
Oh my gosh, the Little Big House. I feel like, well, I don't know, because I was here for maybe 2 years. So I had about 2 years before the pandemic happened, and then everybody stayed home, right? So I was kind of, like, I would go out, but I don't really drink anymore, so, you know, and I would go to shows. I feel like the shows don't happen as often, but I feel like the people, like also too, the people that were a part of that community, we're all 10 years older now too, right? So I feel like I might be a little too old to know what the kids are doing these days. Coming to Misfit Night Market, at least. That's one thing they do.
Do you see a lot of youth at the night market?
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with some customers that were at my table, and I can't remember if they bought anything or not, but it was just a really nice conversation. They were so excited to be like, oh my God, there's so many like cool people here, and this is so much fun. And then I asked them like how old they were, and they were like, oh, we're like 16. And I was like, I could be your mother. And some of our volunteers, like I've had volunteers that were like 15, 16. One of our vendors, Nix, she's, well, I don't know if she's still 14, but she was 14 last year. Yeah, it's kind of, it has all ages interest. Maybe not the old people. I haven't seen too many old people there, except for my parents.
Is there an older generation of weirdos in Kamloops hidden somewhere?
Yes, there is, because we are them. So, don't you think?
Yes, I don't think that we're. No, we're still the kids. That's definitely.
Yeah. My entire life goal now is just being kinder to my inner child. So.
What does the Misfit Night Market give Kamloops that other markets don't?
We don't have any MLMs. We do tend to curate more of, I tend to be more attracted to vendors that maybe don't necessarily appear at a standard market, or maybe they've done a couple, but it never goes so well for them because their stuff is, their customer doesn't attend those events. Some of our customers love supporting local makers, go to craft shows all the time. That's how I knew that at least a market would be a good thing to do, because I've attended many as a customer. So I just think it's just one alternative queer kind of space in a city that doesn't have too many of those spaces. We have some.
What is your reaction to the feedback you're getting on the market and the popularity and the just the amount of people coming to it?
Disbelief, gratitude, purpose, to be honest. If I want to be like fully transparent, hearing the feedback has been like both validating and inspiring. It makes me want to keep doing it. It makes me want to work harder to keep making it better. It really, like, and I feel like every vendor could also attest to that too. It's like the popularity of it, it's incredible. Like, it almost makes me cry sometimes. Like, I've come home and have cried because I just felt so grateful to have that support. And whether or not people buy from me, that's beyond that. It's looking up and seeing this space full of people, and I can't even go to the bathroom. And everybody's smiling and happy. It's amazing. It's like, it only solidifies that this is what I want to do with my life. Like, you know, working for other people, I don't want to do that.
What advice do you give your younger self to be more prepared for this?
Oh my God, RuPaul. What advice would I give to little Jess? Get your mental illness diagnosed earlier so you can handle that stuff is one thing. But the other is, I would be like, don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't hide what makes you different. You know, thankfully, I feel like I did kind of embrace that as like a rebellious, angsty teenager. But, you know, trust yourself and trust the process. I think that when you are able to, you know, express, like, or when you're able to do kind of like what gives you meaning, then you just gotta trust that and go for it. And I'm kind of in the process of trusting the universe right now and hoping for the best. You know, we got a whole new year planned for night markets. So I'm just excited to get to work and to meet up with all my maker pals again, because we don't hang out outside of the night market. So it'll be nice to see everyone again.
What has your experience been with the city?
I love living here. I love the city. It's beautiful. I love most of the people. But Kamloops really still is 3 farm towns in a trench coat. There is still that conservative faction here, and there has been a little bit of pushback, but not too much. I think the worst pushback I got was when I had to postpone the March 2020 market for obvious reasons. And then when I did kind of like a modified version at what is now Studio Mica across the street, and Mitch from Redbeard helped me out with that. But that was also October 2021. Masks hadn't been quite mandated yet, but as an essential worker and someone with an immunocompromised mother, I did make masks mandatory. Said if you're gonna come, wear a mask. I set it up so like there was like no vendors. They just had their table set up and I was just like a little shop. And I did have some people push back saying I was like discriminating against people who don't want to wear masks or whatever, but I didn't care. I didn't care because I was like, well, excuse me, you're not the person putting yourself in the middle of this when you're an essential worker. Like, so I was just kind of like, sure. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like Kamloops has been fairly welcoming. I'm sure there will be detractors, but you know, if they paying your bill, if they're not paying your bills, pay them no mind. RuPaul.
As a kid, as a young child growing up, did you know that you were weird and different?
No. No, I tried so hard. I tried so hard to be like a normal person. Well, I mean, I kind of like, I felt like I was different, but I didn't always feel like I was different because, you know, you're a pretty typical kid until you reach a certain age and then you start realizing, okay, maybe I'm not really like everybody else in my class. You know, I remember 14 years old going into high school realizing like, oh, I actually don't fit in at all with the people that I thought were my friend group, right? But then, you know, you find your people eventually as you start to kind of figure out who you are. I definitely, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I was a weird kid. I was obsessed with like The Craft, with Scream, with Twister for some reason, Titanic too. Yeah, I got really hyper-focused on things. But I think that was more just like probably ADHD.
How do the artists, vendors, yourself, the Haus of Misfit, fit into the normal business scheme of Kamloops?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I would love for some, you know, maybe some legitimacy from the city. But I think it's definitely like, it's almost like this like underground economy, I feel like. Because when people come here to the night market, they spend their hard-earned money with these artists and small businesses. What do? They take that money and put it back into their art, which allows them to come back with even more product. And it also lets them, you know, buy things that they want from, you know, people are like, oh, I made enough money, I can go shopping now. You know, and they'll come to my table and be like, I'm going to buy some things. So I feel like it is kind of like almost like a secondary economy then. But hopefully, you know, over the next year, I am kind of looking to put on my business hat and, you know, maybe bring some of that legitimacy. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I would love for something like isn't it so much more fun to go to like a night market than to go to the mall?
Because you've tried very hard to make this a legitimate business,
Yeah.
to actually go and do what business owners do, get a business license.
Mm-hmm.
And have you gotten support from any factions within Kamloops to make that happen?
Well, aside from like other businesses like you guys, Bigfoot tattoos and red beard. I have been working relatively closely with Venture Kamloops for the last year and a bit. I kind of started off a little apprehensive. I wasn't fully committed to it at the time, and now I'm kind of more, the business plan is like in its rough draft. I have to do a pitch presentation with business members of the community, which I'm semi-terrified about, but I'm hoping I can just kind of inject that. I can just make it weird enough that maybe they are just asking themselves what just happened. Hopefully. So yeah, and hopefully Futurepreneur can come through that as well. And hopefully it will kind of lead to a more permanent, legitimate thing.
How hard is it for you to create something and put your time and effort into this, and then just see it go off into the world?
I love it. It's so, it's a great feeling. Sometimes it's kind of hard. With my hats, I've definitely priced them, hoping no one would buy certain ones. Because I was just like, I just like it. I just want to look at it forever. But sometimes too, it's like, especially with the block tats, they're not like, they're not my bread and butter. It's more something I do because I just enjoy it. And if people buy it, then great. But that's not like a big part of my business. So I think it kind of depends. I like making things and having people like them. It's like,
So you make things that you like, and then it just happens that other people like it.
yeah. It was the exact opposite of what I was told to do in fashion design school. They're like, don't make things for yourself. You got to make things for your target market. And I was like, well, what if I'm my target market? And I still am, and we're here.
Do you think your vendors that don't have success at the other markets, or not including the other markets, are they being overlooked?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I just think too, it's the type of customer that it's just not their customer. I've had vendors that have done other markets, and myself included. I do other markets too. I'm trying to pop up and tell people about the night markets and what I do. If you like what I sell, come check it out. But like, I think it could be harder sometimes, but I think it's just a matter of, like knowing where your customer is going too. And sometimes your customer might not be going to, the craft show at the church in Westside, right? Like, so I think that kind of maybe it's not so much being overlooked, but it's just maybe they haven't found their people. And thankfully, their people do exist here, so that's great news.
Well, thank you again, Jess, for coming out.
Thank you for having me. Can I get a cheers?
Cheers, absolutely.
Woo!
And thank you for joining us at Conversations, and we'll see you next time.